Welcome back. In this episode, I'm going to teach you how to deal with crisis, deadlines, and insults. It's a very powerful concept because we all experience crises in our life. We all have deadlines that loom over us, and we all have people who we take offense or they insult us, whether they intended to or not. And I had a huge epiphany on how to deal with crisis, deadlines, and insults that has made all the difference in the world, and I'm going to share it with you. I'm Doug Andrew, and I have had a lot of mentors in my life that have helped me immensely understand concepts. And so I'm going to share with you how this all started. I was meeting with my wife and some other colleagues up in LaConner, Washington. That's about an hour north of Seattle on the Puget Sound. And we were visiting Pransky and Associates. Now, George Pransky and his wife Linda wrote a book called The Relationship Handbook. But we went up there to check him out because we were going to refer people to him that were maybe struggling with relationships with their spouse or their children. And I had learned that he had helped many couples with their marriage or with their children who had problems with maybe anorexia or bulimia or just self-esteem. And so one morning he was talking on a whiteboard and he said, okay, let's talk about 3 things that happened to all of us. It was not in this order. I rearranged the order. You'll see why. We all experience crises in our life, okay? And so this is just part of living in the world. We have these crises that happens and all of a sudden we can choose to be upset, but we're not obligated to be, but it's a fact of life. We have deadlines that loom over us and it puts pressure. And then we have these insults, these offenses, and we get upset. So he says, what are some of the emotions that come out when we experience crisis, deadlines, and insults? Well, we have anxiety. We get angry. We get retaliatory. We want revenge. How could they say that? Don't they understand everything I've gone through to him? And he says, we have these experiences and these emotions. He said, now, you can, again, choose to take offense, but I found that probably 90% of the time I took offense, people didn't mean to offend me. I thought, And so as I thought about this, I go, whoa. I've been studying this for years in the good book, okay, the Bible. And it all came together. The way you deal with crisis is with faith. If I have a crisis in life and I get upset, fear comes in. And I have learned that fear and faith cannot occupy the human heart simultaneously. So if I have fear, that's a signal that I'm not exercising faith. Now, faith without works is dead, but I have to have faith in a brighter future that I will get through this and that this is an experience I can grow from, that I can learn by struggling and overcoming. It will make me stronger. So instead of looking at it like, oh, what am I going to do with this crisis? I'm going, oh, okay, well, my Creator is trusting me enough that He's not going to give me anything I can't overcome. So here we go. What am I going to learn from this? And I'll be stronger when I get done. And I can lift other people up once I've gone through this and conquered it myself. It changes my whole attitude when a crisis happens because I have faith. What about those deadlines? Back with my 3rd book, it was $1 million advance by my publisher, Time Warner. And the manuscript was due the day after Labor Day weekend. Now, I could choose to be all anxious and like, oh no, my whole Labor Day weekend's going to be editing and trying and Federal Expressing that package to New York and making sure. Now, I can choose to get stressed out. But I learned from a mentor, Zig Ziglar, instead of calling it a deadline, to call it a lifeline. See, Zig used to say, people call these on the intersection stoplights, but they're really made to make traffic go. So he would call them go lights. When he had a cold, his fever went up. He says, I don't have any colds anymore. I have occasional warms because his fever went up, okay? People say, oh, that is so ridiculous. It actually works. So I started calling deadlines lifelines. I can't wait till this date, because then I'll be able to see how it happens, and it'll be a New York Times, Wall Street Journal #1 bestseller and everything, and you become what you think about. So instead of getting all stressed out that this is a deadline, it's a lifeline, and so I'm dealing with them with hope. Faith, hope, what's next? Charity or love. So how do you deal with insults or offenses? I went to a woman's funeral program, and I'll never forget what it said. It says she was never offended because she never took offense. I'll never forget that. See, Mark Twain said that forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet spreads upon the hill that crushed it. So if 90% of the time people don't mean to offend, but we take offense, who's it hurting? It's hurting me if I take offense. If the 10% of the time they wanted to offend me, if you really want to get back, don't take offense. That'll bug them to pieces, okay? So don't take offense. Just say, oh, bless your heart. If you understood what I'd been through that day or whatever, I forgive you. Just be charitable. You didn't understand and so forth, so that's okay. And you move on. Because if you don't forgive, who does it hurt? It hurts you. It doesn't hurt them. See, forgive is forgiving. When I got that epiphany that day in LaConner, Washington, it was a game changer. And from that point forward, anytime I've had crisis, deadlines, or insults, I exercise faith, which overcomes the crisis, hope, which overcomes the deadline, it turns into a lifeline. I exercise charity, and I no longer take offense. It changes everything in my mind, and life is now wonderful, instead of going through all the stress and the anger and the revenge. So how can you do this? So in these episodes, there is no health agenda, financial agenda, or religious agenda, or political agenda. But what I want to do is empower you, whatever your belief is of a higher power. I'm Christian, and I actually taught the life of Christ, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament for 8 years on a volunteer basis. So in John chapter 15, what I teach my kids and grandkids, this is where Christ is going to be crucified the next day, and he's with 11 of his disciples because Judas has already left to betray him. And he's talking to the other 11, and he said, I am the true vine, and my Father in heaven, is the husbandman. He said, every branch that beareth not fruit, because they were branches of this, he taketh away. If you're not bearing fruit, really our Creator has no use for us. But then he said, every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, so that it may bear more fruit. So what does that mean? To bear fruit means to be in motion, adding value in the world. And as I teach my children and grandchildren this concept, I say, don't be a victim. When things happen, don't say, poor little me. Don't blame, justify, or operate in shame. You want to be responsible and accountable. And so deem yourself worthy to be trusted to have this struggle or this trial so that you can overcome and learn from that experience. And when you learn to deal with crisis, deadlines, and insults with faith, hope, and charity, and become responsible and accountable, you can become strong so that when you need to lift others up, you will be on higher ground. So if you would like to teach those that you care about how to be responsible and accountable, deal above the line is what I call it, click on this episode and you will be empowered on how to teach responsibility and accountability to those that you care about.